Welcome to another episode of Stories from the Edge of Life. Once again, we have a very special guest, Mr. Daniel Lim. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, how are you
Da-
doing?
Very good, thank you. Uh, Very nice of you to ask. I'm doing very well. And how about you?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. Being creative in this space.
All right. So we'll hear more about that. Daniel, before we get started, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Daniel Lim. I'm from Singapore, but I'm now based in Chicago. I work primarily as a producer and a singer-songwriter. Um, and yeah, I mean, you can find my music and under the moniker Daniel and the Sparrows. That's my name. So yeah, I'm glad to be here for this interview.
Great. And we'll post the links to those sites along with this video. So
Sure.
thank you for sharing that. And I am Parag Bharadwaj. I'm a palliative care physician in the US. So Daniel, you said you are a lot of things. Wow, that's very impressive. Producer, musician, songwriter. Uh, what got you into music?
Yeah, I started music at the relative late age of 14. Well, I should say I started guitar at the late age of 14. I actually started playing instruments earlier, but I was not really interested in it. I think what really got me started was, I think just the art of songwriting, the art of storytelling through songwriting, really intrigued me, and almost everything after that, whether I operate as a producer or an instrumentalist or even an audio engineer, has always been to feed and assist the craft of storytelling through songwriting. Um, yeah, so 14 is when I started playing guitar and started songwriting. Just kind of started music a little earlier than that.
Got it. So could you list the instruments that you're able to play?
Yeah, so my primary instrument would be guitar. I play electric, acoustic, classical, and I can play anything that looks like a guitar. So a mandolin, banjo, ukulele. Mandolin and banjo a little bit less, but a ukulele definitely no problem. I play keys and bass and drums. Everything in a normal band setting, so to speak, I can play. Nothing, no classical instruments.
I will admit I'm feeling a bit envious. I would have been very happy if I could play just one of the many instruments that you described.
Not too late to start, yeah.
So now, what do you think makes music unique? We've spoken a little bit about um, how music tends to heal, right? And I think you add an additional few layers to that, not just the sound, but also the words that go along with the music and the stories that you just described, right?
Mm.
So, from your perspective, what makes music unique compared to other mediums in terms of providing comfort to people?
Yeah. So music, I find it a really interesting medium with regards to art form because if you look at, say, the visual arts, which is another really powerful way to approach people and speak to people, but like visual arts, you are manipulating a physical, even if it's pixels on a screen, you're still manipulating something that is somewhat physical. But music, it's vibrations in the air, and I find that really fascinating. How we're able to vibrate the air using either the instrument or your voice, and for the listener to sort of interpret those vibrations in the air and make sense of it and understand, wow, like this is beautiful in a harmonic understanding. So see, just the form of music in and of itself is such a strange and unique um, concept, so to speak. With regards to how it heals people, I think one of the most basic forms of communications, at least in humanity, would be the spoken word. I mean, every culture has a spoken language. Many cultures don't have a written language, so um, but every culture has a spoken language, and I would say that is what separates us from from the animal world and ability to communicate so effectively from one person to another, and also from one generation to another through oral storytelling. And so music actually overlaps a lot in that form because we're both, I guess, using vibrations in the air to communicate, whether it's spoken word or music. So I guess it's a form that we are familiar with almost intrinsically as humans, and so there's just a much thinner barrier, I would say, than a lot of other art forms. At least for my case, at least for me as an individual, it's a thinner barrier to get from my head to my heart when it comes to me auditorily, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm making sense in
No,
what
no,
I'm
you are,
saying,
you are. It's
but
fascinating because I think every individual is unique, right?
yes.
And we look at the same thing differently. I
Mhm.
think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So, that's the way you do it. That's
Yeah, that's
great.
the beauty. And another approach that I have to music that is might be different from other musicians as well, but I'm sure other musicians also approach music the same way that I do. Is I'm also a very visual person. Um, in fact, most of the time when I'm inspired by something, is usually by something visual. Um, whether I'm looking out at a prairie in the outskirts of Chicago and looking out at like this icy field in the middle of winter, that visual input informs a lot of my creativity and my musicality. uh and then I translate it into music as well. So it's not just one. It's not like, oh, if I went blind, there will be no impact in my creative process or in my quality of life with regards to communicating with other humans. We need all of it, visual and auditory as well. But in my heart, obviously, audio has a special space in my life.
That's fascinating because music is an auditory thing, and but it's fascinating that you describe the involvement of other senses,
Mhm.
for the music you create, and that's how you do it. So, have you ever had have you ever been in a situation where you had to use the healing power of the music? Perhaps you created, or somebody else.
Mm. Um, well, yes, I would say almost on a daily basis. uh, I think people can resonate with the healing and therapeutic power of journaling, for example, of writing, right? Um, and people would attest to the healing power of expressing themselves, especially in moments where it's really hard to express yourself, especially in times of tragedy and trauma. Uh, my main process of my main way of processing difficult situations is actually through songwriting. So I write almost on a daily basis, so I write a lot. And people don't often hear the music that like all of the music. Maybe they hear about 30% of the music that I write, the ones that I really feel passionate about. But when I come in contact with something difficult, whether it's something difficult that's happening to someone else, or it's something difficult that's happening to me personally, I process through um, writing and putting it to music. Putting it to music part is really essential. Of course, listening to music also, it takes me to places. I remember when I was younger as a teenager, I think my first breakup. And now it sounds silly, but back then is a real it hit me hard. And I remember the Eagles took me through that, "The Heart of the Matter" by Don Henley. That song just, I guess, spoke a message to my heart that my heart needed to hear, that my heart would not have been open to hearing if not through music. Um, so I guess the short answer is yes, definitely. Many instances where music played a part in the healing process in my life.
Yeah, what I found very interesting is you mentioned you get inspired to write music based on your not only your personal experiences that you're going through, but also what you see happening to others. Could you
Yeah.
shed some light on that?
Yeah. So, well, I guess a passion project of mine, and I haven't done it in a while. Um, I'd say primarily because of COVID, and I never just got back to it. Is I used to do this thing called Sparrow projects. So Daniel and the Sparrows, um, is sort of a metaphor for people, because there's a metaphor like Bob Dylan was talking about how every sparrow that falls, um, and and so it's like sparrow is like one of the most minor, tiny little birds, especially in comparison to like birds of prey like the eagle and stuff like that. And sometimes I feel that people treat others, at least in their mind, as if they're just nothing more than sparrows in the field. And my desire was to actually tell these stories, um, that are beautiful and artistic. Just the story itself, what this person has gone through, processes of redemption. It's beautiful in and of itself, but it's almost always overlooked. So I see music somewhat as a framework, as a frame. You know, you have a picture, it's a beautiful picture. Once you put it in a frame, it's wow, it's even nicer, you know? So I saw music as a frame to sort of point people, so to speak, to these beautiful stories of redemption, whether or not, and these stories are usually overlooked, as I said. And I feel the purpose of my music in these projects is to highlight, I guess I would say, these stories. Yeah, so I've done a few of these. You can find them on YouTube. I did one in Egypt, in Guatemala, Indonesia, in Greece. It's usually international. And of course, on a daily basis too, when I meet people who are going through difficulties, whether through mental health or physical, um, difficulties, um, I write songs, I guess.
It's very nice of you to write songs for them and about them, right? And because you're an observer, you're in a unique situation where you're seeing people go through things that they might not think how great they are, and you know, but then as somebody witnessing what they're going through and how they're facing challenges, it is usually very inspiring, and that's what this channel is all about. So there's definitely an overlap between what you're doing and what we are doing. uh, Definitely you're more talented that in being able to put that into music. So yeah, that's great. Definitely would encourage our audience to go and access those videos on YouTube. uh, you did mention you've traveled the world quite a bit. uh, what what is the common denominator when it comes to music in your travels?
Oh wow, that's a really interesting question. A common denominator with regards to music across culture, or a common denominator in like personally when I travel, how I approach music when I write music overseas. Which one?
Let's go with both.
Let's go with both. Uh, music is an interesting topic of question, because I'm interested in ethnomusicology. I'm not an ethnomusicologist myself. Um, I apply myself, and I feel that the art, or the discipline, I should say, of ethnomusicology, is more to study and preserve, existing and traditional artistic, and musical, uh, I guess, traditions and cultures within each tribe and people group. And I find that fascinating, because uh, you get to see how people approach this art form, which is essentially vibrations in the air when you hit a drum, and how they have created their own harmonic system that is so different from the next. So I find it absolutely fascinating. But on the other hand, as well, especially with modernization and the internet, you find that when I went to, I don't know, like Guatemala, especially in the city, Guatemala City, you hear a lot of Western songs. And the songs that are native to Guatemala, you hear a lot of Western diatonic tonalities. So it's like, okay, they're using a lot of Western concepts. And I'd say it's a beautiful thing. You know, a lot of people would say, "Oh, you know, they're losing part of their identity," and I'm sure there's truth to that. But at the same time, you know, this is um, it's it's opened up, I guess, a door for me, so to speak, because my music is primarily very Western, and my approach to it, and it's opened up a door for me to um, have my because my music is now somewhat familiar as well. You know, it being Western, you know, to people around the world. So it's not like if they hear a G, C, D progression is not something they haven't heard before, and it's going to confuse them. So yeah, it's interesting to watch. I guess and see how Western music has influenced at least a younger generation around the world. And it's also interesting to see how these younger generation are still interested in the roots of their past and to apply certain flavors and certain coloration and to apply that in the music that they are creating, young artists who are not from the Western world. Um, yeah, I guess that's something I'm really interested in. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I sort of
I,
went on
th-
a
I think you covered it. It's great. It's great.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Now tell us a little bit about your musical journey in terms of what can we expect in the future. What are some of the
Yeah,
maybe perhaps the current and future projects that you're working on that we can look forward to?
sure. Well, right now, in this very instance, I'm working on a set of songs, I guess I should say. Um, Honestly, my process is I just sort of create, I produce. I don't like it, I throw it away. I like it, I keep it. You know, and I'm at a point where I have a ton of songs, more songs for an album than I should have. So I'm figuring out exactly what the best approach is with regards to releasing this album. And these are songs that I've written, so they're lyrical songs, they have lyrical content. I'm also working on cinematic pieces with a nonprofit organization in North Africa where I'm writing for um, an Arabic rendition of the play "The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe" by C.S. Lewis. Um, and that has been a really fascinating journey. In fact, I'm working with I think you know Aaliyah.
Yes, she
Aaliyah
introduced
Said.
us. Yes.
Yeah, she introduced us. That's right. Yeah, she's a phenomenal oud player, and I'm working with her, and it's sort of like an East meets West um, type of project. So that has occupied my time for the past year, and I'm not done yet. I'm still working on it. And so that's like a whole uh, bunch of music. I'm gonna say like maybe an hour's worth of music um, uh, for for the play, and I'm excited for that because um, just taking the music out of context from the play in and of itself, I think has value. And in fact, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you for the channel, that project. So yeah, that one is what's coming out next.
Well, we very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, I just find it fascinating. You so much creativity. When do you get the greatest burst of creativity? Is there any unique situation or time of the day, or does it just come sporadically to you?
So recently, I was in a sort of like an artist conference. I was there in the capacity of a mentor and a resident artist, and it was held in Hungary. And I was there a month ago, and I met this one incredible creative, and she's a visual artist. I love her work. And her primary audience is actually the neuroscience community. And she was talking about resilience and the importance of embracing the ebbs and flow of creativity. So sometimes dry seasons, but you need to embrace it. I am really bad at that. I do have dry seasons, but I have always operated under the mindset that dry seasons are just seasons where you just need to plow through it. And it has served me well because I believe that creativity, like anything, is a discipline and it requires practice. And the more you practice, the better you get at it, like anything. So I write fast. I'm one of my greatest strengths is my prolificity, how prolific I am. And part of the reason is because I have not embraced these ebbs and flows. So I'm always at a state of creativity, always working. Boom. And I lean into that quite heavily when I travel and I meet someone. I'm like, hey, I love your story. I want to write a song about you. I want to be intentional about it. So I can't wait for a burst of creativity to happen. I got to do it now because I'm leaving in 3 days time, and so I'll write a song within a day. You know? and then refine it later. But then I have something to present during my time there. Um, so in a sense, I'm very unfamiliar with seasons of creativity and seasons of dryness, but they do exist in my life as well, and I'm learning that I need to embrace them more. It's not healthy to just sprint a marathon. Let's just put it that way. I can tell you how it's affected me. Uh, I get seasons where I get really jaded. I get really angry, really frustrated with where I am with regards to my how I perceive myself with regards to being successful as an artist. Like I'm not there. I'm not famous, and that and if I don't embrace these seasons of dryness uh, in a healthy way, then I approach these seasons of dryness as, oh, I'm losing my creativity. I'm never going to get it back. This is it. This is the end. Um, and that has a really negative impact on me. And frankly, the people around me too. I'm not a nice person to be around when I get in those seasons. Uh, yeah, but with regards to creativity, I feel that um, with a lot of artists that I meet, the struggle that people have is on the opposite end of the spectrum, where more often than not, they don't create intentionally and regularly enough, in my opinion, at least. Um, and I think in seasons of dryness, they should still be intentional about writing and creating without burning out. Yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I mean, clearly you're very gifted. Actually, I know somebody who's a very good poet. However, they have long periods of, I would say, droughts, right? And then there are these bursts of creativity and very nice poem writer. And I just was curious, when does your I'm assuming when you set out to write something, is it like do you write a poem, or are you intentional that, oh, this is going to be a song? Because I was just wondering, when does a poem qualify to become a song for you? Or and you also mentioned there are times when you discard some of your works. So what is the threshold that you use where you say, okay, this is something I would like to share with the world?
Mm. Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I guess I approach everything when I write that I have no intention of sharing it with the world. So and what I'm saying is I write without with an audience of one in mind, and it's just myself. You know. Um, and yes, sometimes I do write. Obviously, especially if it's client work. Um, like I had a radio station. They were doing this thing and they wanted me to write a few songs pertaining to these subjects. And so I did. And that one, you have no choice. You gotta do what they want. If they want more cowbell, you give them more cowbell. Whatever they want, just give them what they want. Um, but I don't necessarily have a threshold. I think it's more of an intuition, and I think a lot of artists can relate to that as well. Um, and to be fair, the intuition isn't always right. My threshold as you put it, isn't always right. Uh, for example, I'm working with a guy now um, who found one of my songs and was like, "Hey, I want to work with you to start promoting your music um, and do it professionally." That's what he does, and he's very and I appreciate this about him. He's very critical and um, he has an opinion about what he wants to push and what he doesn't want to push. And the song he chose that he absolutely loved and was like, I want to. This is the song that I think needs to be your face. It's like my least favorite song of everything I released. I released it and walked away and said I never wanted to have anything to do with that ever again. And and here we have someone who sees value in it. Um, and this is recent. This is like within the past few months. So I think within the past few months, I'm learning a humble lesson to realize that my my opinion of my own music even is really not even as valuable as or as accurate as I think it is. So that's a tough question that at least I struggle to answer. What is which portions sections of my art is worthy of showing the rest of the world? I don't know. I mean, I just show what I feel is good, and I'm wrong sometimes.
Well, one thing you're definitely that one thing that definitely shows is that you're very honest, and you're very transparent, very candid in sharing what's on your mind, which we really appreciate.
No, thank you. I try to be at least.
Yeah, and I I would request, like you said, what you might not find to be as good might be just wonderful, for somebody listening to your music. So it seems like you have a lot of music that is lying there, and I would request you to share, because I've read some of the things that you've written, and they're very powerful. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, it's amazing. Uh, you have that skill to play with words, and
Mm,
yeah, I just find it fascinating. So thank you.
I
All
appreciate
right.
that.
So we'll conclude our interview here. I would request you to consider coming back again as you know journey your way through in the music world, and let us know what you've been up to.
Sure. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the direction of these interviews and the musicians you're talking to. I think it's very meaningful, especially for uh, the people who need the music.
Thank you very much.
All right.